Hey, this is Lorena, and I wanted to do a video on how I custom quilt a quilt for my client. And what we're going to talk about, I just did a recent video on how I based or locked the quilt down, and I'll post a video here if you want to see that. And yeah, we're going to be talking about stitching in the ditch. I normally do not like stitching in the ditch a quilt down. Why? Because I'm lazy. That's the truth. Ugh. I don't want to. And one of the reasons why I usually don't do it is because really I'm lazy. But one of the quilts that I did for one of my clients, her name is Kathy Stockton, I didn't stitch the quilt in the ditch down when I should have, and I ended up paying for it at the end of it. I ended up having puddling in the center, and I had to kind of figure out how to fix that. And in hindsight, when I was finishing that quilt, I said, you know what, if I would have stitched in the ditch, I wouldn't have this problem, because everything would have been locked down and it wouldn't have shifted, even though I basted it down, because I didn't stitch it in the ditch. Yeah, it still kind of shifted for me. I've just been telling myself that from here on out, if I do a custom quilt, the best thing to do is stitch in the ditch any area down that I'm going to be doing a lot of quilting on. I also wanted to share this. When I stitch in the ditch, I like raising I have a hydraulics, and it rises up. Make sure that, I think this is the best way of stitching in the ditch. It's make sure that the bar is right under your chest area, so you're not leaning over. Now, in the areas where I was leaning over, I ended up making more mistakes. In the areas where I was kind of standing upright and I was kind of hovering over, not leaning over, I ended up having a lot more control with the ruler, a lot more control with my machine, a lot less mistakes, and a lot less stitching. And I tend to stitch in the ditch standing up. That's a beautiful quilt, right? I just finished and I'm tired, but I'm doing a video for you. Okay, let me keep going. My favorite ruler is the Stitch in the Ditch ruler by Dritz. I'm sure the reason I love this ruler is if you literally line these two little ends to the seam of the fabric, it literally, if you take your time and make sure these are lined up and your foot is where it needs to be, close to the ruler, leaning on the ruler, you'll have a beautiful stitching in the ditch performance. You also need the plate to do ruler work. It just locks in. I love this plate, by the way. All right, let's talk about the thread I used. Initially, I was using King Tut on the bottom bobbin because I like using a thicker thread, and I was gonna use King Tut on the top. I've never custom quilted with King Tut on the top. I don't know, I wanted to try it and see how it worked. The thread kept popping on me, so do not recommend. So I went ahead and I switched to a bottom line thread. I like the poly thread, the thinner thread, with a thicker bobbin thread on the bottom. I just like it, okay? It works for me. So in this video, you're gonna see that I started stitching in the ditch where the diamond and star area start. Now, I usually work in one section, and then I see how far my machine goes down, so I know where my stopping point is, and I go ahead and start stitching in the ditch, the center star area. So I'm gonna start down here, go all the way around, and then roll the machine a little bit and come here. And I try to make it to where I travel all the way across with as little as possible of stops. Now, if I end up having stops, which I do end up having a lot of, I make sure I leave the bobbin and an end tail so I know where I stopped, so when I move and rotate the quilt again, I can see where I need to start again. So here you see me stitching in the ditch, the diamond area and the star area. And stitching in the ditch is like working out. You gotta warm up. but all of this center area is stitched down. Then I'm going to start stitching in the ditch all this bottom area, and then go and rotate myself out. And this way, if there's any bowing or buckling in the fabric, you can push it to either side. Then you're going to see that after I stitched in the ditch, the center area, I'm rolling the quilt in one direction and I'm working on stitching in the ditch the diamond seams. So I just kind of started stitching on the ditch on the inside diamond seams and started stitching in the ditch on the outside diamond seams so I could stitch those down. Then I'm going to draw here and start working from here. Let me just say this, I used to hurt myself emotionally and judge myself strictly on the fact that, oh my God, you didn't stitch on the ditch perfectly. There's this wonderful thing that you can do that will fix that if you epically fail and get off the ditch or go off a bit. You can unstitch it. Yeah, I would just get so frustrated with myself when I would mess up, and I want you to know that you can pop those stitches up. Here it went off real bad, and I'm gonna just stitch it and fix it. That's the neat thing about quilting, you can unstitch. You don't have to be perfect. Once I started finishing the diamond area, I also went and transferred to one side of the quilt where they had the stars, and I started stitching in the ditch in that section. So in the sense, I started working from the center to center down, and then I worked on either one of the stars on the right side and then started working on one of the stars on the left side and stitching in the ditch that whole area. I recommend, and this is where I messed up, only stitch the horizontal lines. But I was trying to stitch the vertical lines, and I found that when I started finishing the quilt off, that was kind of like a mistake. I figured out how to fix it, but I should have just stitched and ditched the horizontal lines. When you're doing vertical stitching in the ditch, you're sewing up, then rolling the quilt, and then sewing up and rolling the quilt. And I don't know, when I did that, it was okay. But if I would have just taken the quilt off the leaders and rotated it, it would have been so much easier, and it would have looked and come out a lot cleaner than the struggle that I had. And I'll show you the struggle. Then I started stitching in the ditch, the star area on the upper half, so I rolled the quilt up and started stitching in that area. I also started stitching in the ditch the horizontal half square triangles, and I think I have some footage of me stitching in the ditch some of the vertical lines, you know, where I went like this. Don't do that. Quilting the top area. I re-quilted here. Center. All of it is stitched in the ditch. Look how pillowy it is in the bottom. Down here. It's that real thin of poly batting. Now I'm going to start quilting real pretty the center. So that's my video on my beautiful, this is one of my favorite tools for long arm quilting. It's at Joann's for like $16. You can use a coupon. You're stitching the ditch like a professional. I really do appreciate ya. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how I finish the quilt off, designs that I used to quilt in there, and yeah, this quilt is lovely. Oh God. I don't want to give it to my client. She saw it, but I just, you know, when you do such beautiful work that you wish it was your quilt you were working on, that's this quilt. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.